Welcome to SC Media. I'm Tom Spring, and I'm joined today with Rob Gurzeev, CEO and co-founder of CyCognito. And we're here to talk today about issues around October and Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Rob, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about CyCognito, and then we can dive into some of the issues around secure our world, secure our products, and secure our business.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, Tom. Appreciate that. So Rob Gurzeev, CEO and co-founder of CyCognito, spent about 15 years in the general space of outside in cyber risk, mostly on the intelligence community side, and in the last 6 years on the defensive enterprise side. CyCognito serves 20 of the global 100 companies in helping them understand their external exposure, and more importantly, understand how attackers may get into their networks and data and eliminate these attack paths. And looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, well, CyCognito, I think, is uniquely positioned, and I would say yourself are uniquely positioned to understand what exactly it means to have secure products and to secure business. I mean, these are sort of the table stakes when it comes to attack surface management. Can you talk a little bit about the state of affairs when it comes to what the trends are that you're seeing within your customer base and in the industry at large when it comes to secure by design and whether or not vulnerable products are creating vulnerabilities for companies themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So security by design and secured products, as CISA and Esther Lee often talk about, and rightfully so, is a concept that is extremely important because all of our personal data sits on all kinds of companies' products. So it's a great concept and it's desirable. However, very few companies or industries are at a great state in that regard. It's a little bit like meritocracy, if you will, where we can all agree it's a great thing. We can all agree that we should try to get there. But when you look at some big government systems or very big companies, you might not always feel like it's amazingly implemented. And the older the organization, the country, the organization, company, product, the older they are, the more difficult it is to implement new capabilities. And one of the challenges is that many security teams are still using, to get there, security validation capabilities like scanners or penetration testing that were built or designed as concepts and technologies 20 years ago when we had one or two applications exposed to the internet, even at Google or Apple. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And now companies have thousands of them.
Well, yeah, I mean, I do understand that you guys the CyCognito, it constantly takes a hard look at an attack surface and vulnerable assets. And, I just wonder from your unique standpoint, whether or not, the idea that these access points that become the holes in which an adversary can enter into a company, these boil down to products, not always in the IoT sort of sense of things, but they are products. And I'm just wondering, are we getting more secure today compared to yesterday? I mean, are we seeing new products being released by major vendors, and are we still struggling to keep them secure in terms of secure by design? And I think that we can also consider some of the patching the ability to patch and identify vulnerabilities and make them and plug them in real time.
Mm-hmm. I think we have become exponentially better over the last decade at protecting the areas we are aware of and that are well managed. So the top products, the top networks of these bank or telecom or manufacturing company will be much, much better and more secure today than 5 or 10 years ago. The challenge today in terms of where the risk really is the plethora of external exposure that is not being well monitored, not being well tested. Mm-hmm. Even some of the biggest banks, for example, that have more than hundreds of millions of dollars in cybersecurity budget, some of them are testing 5 or 10% of their tens of thousands of exposed web interfaces, because in many organizations that still consists of the 15, 20 years old scanners and manual pen testing, which simply does not scale. And they also don't necessarily know where some of that stuff is. And so we're becoming so much better in protecting the main things we're focused on, yet the challenge is moving to the areas we don't know or don't monitor very well.
Okay, so I'd like to talk a little bit about those areas that we don't know. Why don't we know where these assets are, and why can't we sort of better protect our companies by identifying them and securing them?
Mm-hmm. So 20 years ago, even the biggest companies in the world had maybe 5 or 10 engineers in the company that could make changes in the network or could make this piece of code be launched and exposed to the internet. And the shift to the cloud is amazing and is great for the business, and every single company should invest a lot of time in doing it. However, now big companies have thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of employees that can create new applications, change the configuration of these SaaS instance over here, this database over there. You're paying this marketing company to build this campaign for you that is collecting PII. It's not your asset, but it's collecting PII of your customers. So the amount of things we need to protect is exponentially bigger. And that's where we need to adopt a different approach to mapping where these things are, understanding what they are, like where's my PII, and of course, monitoring them.
And what are you seeing in terms of vulnerable assets? I mean, when you think about your typical, I mean, maybe no breach is typical, but when you look at some of the recent breaches and what is publicly understood about those breaches, is it following this path that you're outlining here? I mean, are we seeing these assets that aren't they don't have a lot of visibility and aren't well protected? Are these indeed the channels in which these adversaries are getting into networks?
100%. The top analyst firms and endpoint companies and others see that most of the breaches today are attributed to unknown and unmanaged company. For example, this Fortune 100 infrastructure company had, call it 6 incidents over the last few months. 4 of the 6 were related to assets that the security team didn't even know that exist, and de facto was not monitoring at all. Only after the incident, they figured out that they exist and maybe they should do something about it. And of course, when it hits you a few times, you realize that you need that different approach. And I think that's why many security teams that haven't done so yet are starting to establish their perspective and strategy on exposure management, to your point.
Exposure management. I feel like there's, help me out here. There is the attack surface, there are the devices, and there is vulnerability management. These are sort of the three pillars of good security hygiene. When you zero in on the secure by design, and when you think about patching, can you weight those two in terms of, you have a secure by design product, but it's still going to need to be patched. Like, how
Right.
are we as an industry in building something that is secure by design versus how well are we as an industry in terms of patching? I mean, I don't know if that's if you were going to, which is leading which, or is it a tie, or are we getting, better at one versus the other from your vantage point?
That's a great question. I would say that secure by design, de facto, what it means to most people is how do you code more secure, build this application more securely, and how do you implement some best practices and some solutions maybe to monitor and make sure that the application is secure. And when we're talking about a small amount of applications like your top 10, 20, 30 production applications that affect the business the most, that's where you can do that very well today, and teams are much more aware and are doing very good job. When it's really difficult is, now every DevOps tool has a web interface. Every router has a web interface. Every SaaS instance, of course, can be accidentally exposed to the internet or just misconfigured. Even this Fortune 100 insurance company accidentally exposed one of their Jira instances that they were managing. And you can imagine what's there when you manage sensitive projects.
Yeah.
So that's where the challenge is versus perfectly protecting these few things. It's the tens of thousands of applications, cloud instances, random internal machines that accidentally get exposed to the internet. That's where most of the risk is, it seems like.
So if our time is short, and we're going to have to wrap it up, but I mean, can you hint towards what the solution is? I mean, I think, as the co-founder of CyCognito, you have an idea of what the solution is in terms of your own product. But I'm just wondering, like, in the larger sort of cybersecurity community, where do you see the answers beyond the solution that your company provides?
Of course. So in a vendor agnostic perspective and advice, I would refer people to these three metrics that are extremely useful to think about to understand where am I right now, where I want to go, and can my current programs and so on take me there. So the first one is security testing coverage. How many web interfaces and things I have exposed to the attackers and internet that I'm actually covering with my pen testing, DAST, whatever you trust. So coverage is number one. It's usually at around 5 to 50%. Of course, it should be 100. Yeah. Number two, what is the testing cadence of whatever you trust? Say you have the best pen testing team in the world, and they test whatever once a year, and you're leaving attackers 12 months every time to find new vulnerabilities, misconfigurations. Not very good. So ideally, you want that to be daily or weekly. Today, that's possible. So where are you between annual and daily? And the most important metric is mean time to remediation of critical risk. Usually you want to be in the few days or 2 weeks. And on average, companies are at 1 month to 3 months. Mm-hmm. So these are some useful metrics to consider and judge different programs, solutions, directions by.
Well, I'm glad that we've just solved all the cybersecurity problems for the month of October. For the month of October, at least. Rob, thank you so much for your time. We'll leave it right there, and I really appreciate you taking the time and talking with SC Media on this October Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Tom.